Hi everyone, welcome to the Elendi Files, where we navigate the complexities of the global regulatory landscape of medical products. Our goal is to help make global medical product regulations accessible to everyone. So whether you're a manufacturer, an intermediary, regulatory specialist, or CEO of a MedTech startup, you're in the right place. Be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn and our website, ElendiLabs.com. This is Teddy, the General Manager of ElendiLabs. At ElendiLabs, we're all about connecting clients, be it medical product manufacturers, MedTech startups, biotech startups with the right regulatory expertise to get products to people faster. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Vaibhav, who helps to navigate the complexities of the Indian market. We're going to spend some time learning more about the regulation landscape in India. Vaibhav, thanks for being here. Could you give us a brief introduction of yourself to start off with?
Yeah, thank you, Teddy, for giving me this opportunity and connect with you and from our viewers and listeners worldwide. So my background comes from the medical device and IVD regulatory space with a strong focus on the business development and the client-facing regulatory consulting part. So I have worked with manufacturers across different markets on areas including Indian regulatory requirements, EU MDR, clinical evaluation, post-market clinical follow-up, post-market surveillance follow-ups, and related technical and regulatory activities. So, the big part of my work has been understanding what the manufacturer actually needs from a regulatory and commercial perspective, identifying the right pathway, coordinating with the technical teams, and helping the client move the project forward. So within the Indian market specifically, I think one of the biggest challenge for manufacturers is that they know they want to enter India, but they don't know exactly where to start. So classification, pathway, documentation, evidence, timelines, and so on. That's where I usually see the most of the value in getting involved early.
So your expertise is not just limited to medical devices, but also pharmaceutical products, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then you just mentioned that there are so many manufacturers that they're not familiar with the regulatory landscape and the market, the competition landscape also in India when they try to enter India. So do you have any word of advice for manufacturers trying to enter the Indian market?
Yes. So from my end, from my perspective, I think it's better that the manufacturers first identify the intended use of the device, do the regulatory analysis, and classify the device according to the regulatory needs of Indian market. The regulatory authority for India is CDSCO, Central Drug Standards and Control Organization. So you need to go through their rules, the regulations, and fit in the device exactly according to their classifications. So that's where we can come forward and tell the manufacturer or the clients that yes, your device fits in this classification, and according to this classification, whatever the documentation, whatever the evidence needs to be collected, whatever the filings has to be done, then we can proceed accordingly.
Yeah, I also hear that there's like a checklist of document requirements.
Yes, exactly.
Are they very clear? And then do you have to talk to the CDSCO officers very often online? So are they very clear? Are they clear enough on the on guidance issued?
Let me explain you with an example. So as you have mentioned checklist, so yes, there are various checklists, but it completely depends on what type of permissions or licenses in our context needs to be approved. So for example, if there's an Indian client who wants to import a medical device, consider an example from South Korea. So there's a client who needs to import device from South Korea, then he need to apply according to the requisites of Indian regulatory body, and the forms need to fill, and the import license form is known as MD15. Technically, it's MD14, and the license is approved under MD14. So yes, for specific import license under MD14, there has a different checklist, and it's quite clear, and it's explicitly, and the documents are explicitly mentioned which type of documents are needed. But again, depends on the regulatory classification according to Indian MDR 2017 rules. And the follow-up question from your end was we need to contact with the CDSCO authorities. So the work gets done online via CDSCO portal, but they have the facility to meet in person on the certain days and the times. So to get to know the status of the application. So yes, both the options are possible, online and offline also.
But I think for most foreign manufacturers, they might want to have access to. They may prefer online information because that'll make things more clear. Because offline, they have difficulty talking to the officers, right?
Yeah, but officers are quite. CDSCO department is quite overwhelmed at this point because every week, 15 days or so, a new innovation gets into the India market, and for every innovation there has to be approval, be it for the marketing purposes, for the testing purposes, for even the registering of the device has to be done. So it makes it possible to get the answers from the CDSCO officials, but they are quite busy from my experience, because I have good contacts at the CDSCO and even my applications are pending. So yeah, they are quite busy.
So how long does it take usually for you to finish registration?
So again, it depends on the regulatory classification and the type of the licenses. For import license, as I've mentioned, the official government timeline is 270 days, near about 270 days or 280 business working days, and excluding all the
270 business days.
270 to 280 business days, excluding weekends and government holidays.
It's about a year. 200.
Yes, it's a year.
Wow,
it's the official timeline, but yeah, it's the official timeline given by the government. But if your documentation is clear, the points are clarified to the CDSCO body, then there are chances that the license may get approved early.
So you're saying that for CE clear or EU cleared products, they may enjoy an advantage for approval.
Yeah, because already they have gone through rigorous regulatory testings and evidences.
But there is not an official or expedited pathway or scheme for products with a CE mark. Is there any such scheme or policy for CE clear?
No, there's nothing exclusive for CE or FDA mark device. It has to go to the same pathway. Again, it depends on the classification and the intended purpose and the process of the Indian MDR.
Okay, so for every shipment of products imported to India, you have to apply for one import license, right? So for every shipment, or do you apply for a 1 year a license that is valid for 1 year to import all the medical devices with one company?
So yeah, there are 2 to 3 circumstances. First of all, let me clear: you have to apply only once. And once you get the license, it is valid for 5 years. After 5 years, you have to apply for the retention of the license. And then again, its validity increases by 5 years. So that's the first scenario for the import license. The second is, suppose I'm a new importer in India and you are the supplier, but you haven't had any devices in India before me. So you don't have any distributor in India before me. So I need to apply to CDSCO as a new importer.
Okay.
So this process takes time, but if there may have been any distributors before me, then I can apply as a subsequent importer. So the process gets quite easier for a subsequent import.
So the subsequent importers, do they have to obtain an authorization from the first importer?
Not exactly from the first importer, but the manufacturing client itself.
Okay.
They tell us that they are our distributors already and they are doing the business already, and it gets quite easier.
Okay. And what do you suggest for biotech startups or medtech startups who try to enter the Indian market with a limited budget? What should they do?
So, from my perspective, I think first they should classify the device, because most of the startups and innovators make mistakes that they do dossier filings before considering the device and the exact regulatory pathway. So I would suggest them to first study your device, study its intended use according to the target market, and study the regulatory documents and the evidences needed to apply to the concerned regulatory market. Then prepare a proper regulatory dossier, generate the exact clinical evidence according to the intended use of the device, and then initiate the applying process.
So you have to have an initial assessment before you submit the application form online.
The initial assessments, the gap assessments, whatever the files you are lacking, you need to have that appropriate.
Okay, and then AI has been a very heated topic lately, and I think you have also heard of the term SAMD, software as a medical device. How is SAMD regulated in India, and do you have any experience with SAMD registration in India?
Yes, I have applied for a test license for an Indian manufacturer for SAMD. So for SAMDs, the first question is what the software actually does, and whether it falls within the medical device regulatory framework. Once that is established, you can look at the classification and appropriate regulatory path. So there was this one Indian manufacturer who developed the SMD software for the breast cancer, for female breast cancer patients. So he need to have the device tested in the real world. So he needed the test license from the CDSCO, and I catered to him. I liaised with the CDSCO and got the test license approved.
So, can you repeat the last sentence? I couldn't quite hear the last bit.
I said the manufacturer developed the SMD device for the female breast cancer. Yeah. So I catered to the request of him and liaison with the CDSCO and got the test license approved for his device.
Okay. So anything else we should pay attention to when we are registering some new products with CDSCO? Because not just SAMDs, I think there are other categories of products that we might need to pay attention to when we try to register them in India.
Yes, in the context of the SMD, I may say that first you need to go through the exact intended purpose, the qualification. Again, next step may be the classification. Then you study the regulatory pathway. You do the risk management. You do the software documentation, verification, validation of the software, and you generate the clinical evidence supporting your intended use. Then prepare a technical file, technical documentation, and then submit. So according to me, the dossier should be treated as a collection of documents. All the documents need to tell the same story. All the documents should match your exact intended use. That's what I can say.
So,
please continue.
Yeah, because I think it's important to bear in mind that all the documents, they should be aligned on the
Yes.
very purpose of the medical devices, the indication. So you have to. It depends on how you present the story, right? Are they the evidence? Are they supporting one another in the indication of use, and then the product design, etc. So all these documents come together to present a a very clear story to the health authority, to the CDSCO. And because you just mentioned that you're also experienced in EU regulations, MDR, IVDR, and I'm wondering if you think there is a huge difference between registration in India and registration in the EU.
So categorically speaking, I personally feel that registering in European market is quite not harder, I would say, but quite evidence generated, I must say. You need to provide evidence for each and every detail you mention in your technical file, be it like toxicology, genotoxicity assessment, biocompatibility evaluation. You need to have those tests conducted according to the ISOs and submitted to the notified body. Same principle applies in the Indian market also. But, Europeans are always very stricter with the regulations. So I feel that it's tougher to register in the European market. And again, there's that timeline and the queue to wait in the to wait for the notified body approval.
Yeah, and I hear that for class 2B device in the EU, it's more, there's even more emphasis on the presentation of clinical evidence, right? Starting from
class 2. You have to submit the real world clinical evidence, like the device is safe and effective and true to its intended use on the patients in the real world.
Right. And do you have a workflow for registering medical devices in India? So what typically do you do first? And then after the first step, what do you check or counter check to make sure things might go according to your plan?
Yeah, first, I check like whether the manufacturer has the documents according to the list or items mentioned by the CDSCO. So if any one or two documents are missing, I suggest them to prepare them first, get ready with the documents, and then we'll do the final submission. Because if submission happens earlier, submission can happen any day, but the queries which has been raised by the regulatory authority, we have to answer them, and for to answer them, the timeline exceeds, and it just takes longer to get the license or the approval from the CDSCO. So I always suggest them to get the documentation ready, make the file perfect, and then we'll do the final submission. Because there was another SMD client. He was in a hurry. I want to launch the product into the market. I didn't need to get the product registered with the CDSCO. Please do the submission. Please do the application. And I catered to the request. But the number of queries raised was so many that the market launch of the product got delayed by like a year and a half, I think. So that's what happens when you don't have the documentation ready.
So your suggestion is no rush, right? And you have to identify all potential gaps before you start.
Yes, exactly. And I think you must have you may be surprised that the approval for test license for any new device takes only 45 days at CDSCO. Only 45 days.
So you need to. It just means you have to have licenses for the SMDs, right?
Yeah, we need to have the licenses for SMDs.
What license?
So the point of me.
What license are you talking about?
The license, what the situation I shared with the license.
So
what exactly are you asking?
So you just mentioned that the license should be in place, right, for the product.
Yeah, the license should be in place.
Okay, and do you have so other than the SAMDs, do you have any other cases you'd like to share, that cases that might be quite interesting or challenging, and how you might want to share how you overcame those challenges or hurdles?
So yeah, apart from SNDs, I have this import license case. There is a distributor who wants to import, massaging beds and thermal belts and massaging beds from China and South Korea, but due to the lack of documentation from the Chinese and the South Koreans, the free sale certificate, the C certificate, the clinical evaluation certificates and records, the biocompatibility records, because the belts and the beds come in contact with the human skin. So there has to be a biocompatibility test report, a certificate, the conformity of assessment certificate. So these documents are still pending from the manufacturer's end, and the response we get is that we are yet to prepare. We are yet to generate the clinical evidence, because as per the South Koreans or Chinese, they don't need these documents to get the approval. But Indian CDSCO says that we need these documents to get the approval. So the case is pending, and the CDSCO has raised a lot of queries. I think 15 to 16 of them. I on my personal behalf have cleared about 10 of them, and 4 are still pending. And the case happens to be got delayed by the manufacturer side from the South Koreans and Chinese, because they are yet to submit the certificates. And the last response I got was they are in preparation for these certificates and reports.
So there's no way to tell. You can't go straight up to the CDSCO officers and say, "Hey, India, you don't need this," because China and South Korea, they don't need those certificates or documents, right? Because it's the local.
Teddy, I have met with the CDSCO official for this case only, that please do something any other way around, but they strictly said no. And yes, they strictly said no, that we can't do anything. We need to be strict now. It was all okay before 2020, but before COVID, they said it was all okay. But as the time passes, the regulations needs to be stricter. So yeah, we can't do anything.
So you do have any cases that you have succeeded finally in registering the product?
Yeah, I do have cases, but as I told you earlier, that the cases which got successful, the clients had all the documentation in place. They answered the queries very aptly and perfectly. So the CDSCO didn't raise any further queries. The evidence was according to the intended use of the device. So yeah, I also got the successful cases, but we got to learn from the scenarios where the file gets stuck or the queries are raised, so that we get to learn new things where this is stuck, why the lag is happening, why the delay is happening. So I have got both the cases successful. In my experience, I have, the ratio is like 8 out of 10 cases are always successful.
But the most important thing is to have all the documents ready before the submission of documents. Okay, so I'm given to understand that the CDSCO, they are very consistent with the document list, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there is any 1 or 2 documents missing, they might chase after those documents, and I think it's a good thing because it's quite clear, and so that foreign manufacturers, they can follow those online guidances or guidelines, and as long as they fulfill the requirements, then I think there won't be like a lot of unexpected questions or other hiccups raised during the application process, right?
No, there isn't like unexpected questions, but yes, if you don't have like one or two documents, so you can just write an explanation and request a waiver for this document. So if then CDSCO again reviews your application, again reviews your device documents, and if they feel that yes, this waiver or justification describes your document intended use and justifies whatever you have said regarding the certain query. For example, let's consider biocompatibility test report. So they have asked for the report, and if you have said that no, this device doesn't need this test and report because this device doesn't come in contact with the human skin for that record, then you can write the justification like that, give some literature evidences from the other studies which you have conducted across the globe, and then CDSCO will consider, and according to the justification, they'll give you the waiver for that specific particular document. So there has been cases like this also.
Great. So there are some cases that you can always rely on your expertise, so that you can sort of provide a reasonable explanation for the missing documents. But I'm wondering if for clinical, for example, for clinical studies or clinical trials, does CDSCO require local clinical trials to be conducted? Because a lot of clinical trials, they might be conducted in places other than India, for example, the EU or the US. So does the CDSCO accept clinical trial studies conducted in other countries?
So to answer to your question in one sentence, so I can say yes, CDSCO approves the clinical trials and the clinical trials for the devices conducted in other countries. But the clinical trials need to be conducted for Indian manufacturers on Indian patients to get the approval of the device. If it's a high risk device. So, but yes, they approve the devices for the clinical trials from the other countries.
So for example, Class D, for Class D devices, they don't accept clinical trials conducted in other countries, right? But for other classes with a lower risk, then there's a high chance that the CDSCO might accept those trials.
So what I have said that CDSCO doesn't specially require to conduct the clinical trials on Indian patients, but for Indian manufacturers it is required. So if there's another, suppose European manufacturer entering the EU market, he needs to class again high risk device class 3 for the Europe and class D for the Indian market. So he needs to submit the clinical trial reports, the clinical study reports, the evidence generated, and once approval, they'll approve, CDSCO will approve definitely, and once approval is done, he can enter into the India market.
So it's for foreign manufacturers only?
For manufacturers in India. That's what I said.
Okay, for foreign in India. Okay. And,
yes.
And then I'm also wondering, are there any common reasons of rejection apart from the missing documents, or for foreign manufacturers trying to enter the Indian market, other than missing documents or So do you have any other reasons that they might be rejected?
So other reasons may be like on the innovator or the manufacturer part, maybe like classifying the device in the wrong category. I can say that. Suppose your device is device intended use gets a device intended use according to the Indian MDR rules tells that the device gets classified as class C. But then to save time, save money, and to get the approval as early as possible, you classify it as class B, a low risk device. Then again the CDSCO will raise the query, and again it will take time to answer to those queries and get the approval. So this is the first mistake the manufacturers make. The second, I think from my experience, what I've seen that they don't generate enough clinical evidence supporting the intended use of the device, and they just do some of the devices needs need to be statistically approved. Like the patient number has to be there. Like 120, 150 patients need to be tested on the real world in the real world conditions. But again, to save time and save time and money, the manufacturers do test only on the handful of patients, for example 10 to 15, to prove the safety and efficacy of the device, because the probability is very low for the test results to be done. Then again, this is another mistake that most of the manufacturers make. I have faced clients which say on my personal behalf, I recommend them that we need to have 120 patient at least. In the very worst case scenario, we can take it to 100 according to the regulations, of course. But they say no, 100 is too much. 100 is too much. The cost we can't bear. It's too high. So can we do it on 30? So it becomes very, very hard, very difficult to justify the numbers of the patients. So this is another mistake manufacturers make.
Well, it's common because some startups or small companies, they may not have enough budget for conducting clinical trials. They always want to cut down the cost.
Yes,
and then it's also difficult to really communicate the importance of clinical evidence to them, because they might want to take risks due to limited budget. So I think it really requires certain communication skills to educate the manufacturers about
exactly
the importance of those documents. And thanks, Vaibhav. These are incredibly practical insights. And thank you again for sharing a boots on the ground perspective with us today. And for everyone listening and reading transcripts, thanks again for joining us. We'll see you again on the platform. If you haven't checked our website, please head to ElendiLabs.com and be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn.